is Jessica Dahms. I'm the Associate Executive Director at the Marshall Area YMCA, and I've had the privilege of working for the YMCA for actually 10 years. Started as a group exercise instructor, and now for the last 4 years have been here in a full-time capacity, in the last 2 as the Associate Executive Director. And I am thrilled to lead this conversation to celebrate our Y's 20th anniversary. I'm joined today by 3 influential leaders here in our Y's history. So today we have Teresa Lubke, who was the very first CEO of the Marshall Area YMCA, Tim Olson, and then our current CEO, Tom Bolin. So I want to thank you all for taking the time today to join me. I know you're all very busy folks. We're so excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, glad to be here.
All right, well, we're going to start with you, Teresa, because you were the very first CEO. Can you tell us a little bit about what brought you to Marshall to be the CEO at the YMCA? And maybe, people don't know how you came into the project and how the Y was built.
Yeah, I just really lucked out in a lot of ways because YMCA people, my career has always been with the Y. And, YMCA people would say to me after I was in Marshall, how'd you get that great job? Because it really was a great job. And I said, well, I saw an advertisement. And so the volunteers in Marshall were advertising for that first executive director. And I was working for the YMCA of Greater Cincinnati at the time. Saw it, read it, was intrigued by it. And really what caught my attention was really 2 things: that it was helping a community start a YMCA. At the time, the board of directors had been formed for about a year, but they had actually originally incorporated, some people may not remember this, as the Marshall Area Community Center. So they were using MACC. I think I still have a blanket that has MACC embroidered on it. But as they were touring facilities around the state, they saw YMCAs and they fell in love with the work that the YMCAs were doing, with the mission of the Y, with the support structure that YMCAs had. And so they reincorporated in, I believe it was June 2001 as a YMCA, and then started to look for a YMCA executive director. And so I interviewed shortly after that. And I think what really attracted me then to Marshall was, one, I would be coming home because I am from Minnesota originally, but also at the interview, everybody was so welcoming. And, they asked tough questions. Those that are listening that are from Marshall may remember Paul Raykamp. He was on the selection committee at the time. If you didn't know Paul, he was a retired general in the Army. And so when he was interviewing, those were some tough questions. And so it wasn't, just handed on a platter, but very welcoming. Bob Offenty in particular, took me under his wing right away. In fact, it was funny before I left. So I think I came in the night before and then I had a full day of interview, and Bob pulled me aside and did exactly what he wasn't supposed to do. And he said, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but we're going to call and offer you the job in about a day. But that's Bob, right? Once he was building that relationship with somebody, the relationship became really important. So it just was such the right fit, I think, both obviously for the Y, that they offered the job to me, and for me, the opportunity to come home to Minnesota.
So can you tell us a little bit? So when you first started as the CEO, there was no building, right?
Correct. So the volunteers had raised $10 million. Of course, we know that the Schwein Food Company had given that $5 million match. The money was pledged, but being collected still. And they were about 75% through design process of a facility. So I moved there and started work in November of 2001. And the building opened in the summer of 2003, which is why, we're currently celebrating 20 years of that facility being open. So there was about close to 2 years that I was there, introducing the Y to the community, starting to do some programming. We did day camp and gymnastics. And then, of course, getting ready to open the facility, which was probably, 80% of the job for that time period.
All right. Well, moving on to Mr. Tim Olson. Tim, what was it that drew you to Marshall and the Y here?
Sure. So there's some real similarities to what Teresa said. As I was I was in Colorado Springs at the time when Teresa decided to move on to her next opportunity within the Y, and saw that there was an opportunity to get back into kind of the Midwest, closer to home. So that was obviously a draw for me. But as I started to do my research about the Marshall Y and the community, I was really drawn to it and just amazed at what they had done there. And so when I got there for my interview, it was really amazing to see the passion and dedication from the volunteers, and just how proud they were about their facility in Marshall. And when you step back, did in raising $5 million, and then that $5 million from Schwann's, I mean, that is truly amazing for a community that size to raise that dollars and then have that beautiful facility there. And so as I spent my time in Marshall meeting with community leaders and board volunteers, and Bob Offenthy, I had an opportunity right away to visit with him. He took me out to dinner that night for ribs.
Did he ask you to go fishing?
He did not. No, we didn't get that far into it. So, but just sitting and just visiting with people and learning about the community. And again, just that sense of pride and the great foundation that was there. And that goes back to the board volunteers, but it also goes back to Teresa and her leadership in creating what was there in Marshall. And it just got me really excited for that next chapter in my Y career, to go into such a strong foundation, a strong community backing in there. And, it just, people embrace you. There's that Midwestern, everybody's nice, the new guy coming in, and everybody just embraced me, my different thoughts. And it was just such a positive experience in my Y career to be a part of the Marshall history.
Yeah, that's definitely, I talk all the time about how working here at the Y, it's really a second family. I know a lot of people say that, but just some of the things that I've gone through in the last year, my team here is amazing. And you're not going to find another workplace like the Y. There's just nothing like it.
Yeah.
All right, Tom, you're up. I am his right-hand woman, so he deals with me all the time. But can you tell us the story of what drew you to the Marshall Area YMCA?
Yeah, I grew up just down the road in Tracy, and had a background in this area. I still remember driver's ed coming to the big city of Marshall to so we could have stoplights to learn how to use stoplights and driving. And after being in different positions around the country, around the world, I was up at the Y in Wilmer, Minnesota, at the Candy Y County Y, and I always kept my eye on Marshall and saying my parents were getting older, and would that ever make sense to go down to Marshall at some point? So I knew Teresa, knew Tim through the years, came down here for trainings and different things at this Y, so I was pretty familiar. And then when that opening came up, Tim and I actually got together and talked it over a little bit, and those stories came through of the support, and not just from the board, but from the community, and how strong the Y was at that point. And then we all had one thing in common. Bob Offenthy gave me a call, had lunch with Bob Offenthy, and I didn't get to go fishing with him. I would have done that in a heartbeat, but and that all came together, and it worked. It's, I'm still here today, but it's worked out really well with my parents getting older and passing away the last few years. So I'm glad I came to Marshall.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling left out. Bob Offenthy hasn't called me. He did shake my hand, and he did tell me he's the grandfather of this Y, but he's not.
Oh, that's a great expression for him. That is a great expression for him.
Yeah, he definitely takes a lot of pride in this facility. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on, I want to talk to you guys about your favorite memory here at the Marshall Area YMCA. I have one from when Tim was here that we'll talk about in a little bit. But Teresa, what was your favorite memory from being here at the Marshall Y?
This is such a tough question, because I could talk for an hour of great memories, because you look at the opportunity I had was to take the YMCA from just this idea really and volunteers to an actual facility. And so much happens during that process. But thinking about this, the one memory that I share the most and have used in conversations with staff here in Marion, where I've been since I left there, what is about Bob Steen. And I don't know if anybody there remembers Bob Steen. He passed away not that long ago, but he joined the Y right when we opened the facility, and he was a retired teacher, and he wanted to donate a piano. And I don't know if it's still there or not, but he donated an upright piano. We were having Rotary meetings and different things in those meeting spaces, and he felt like a piano would really fit. And he told me that he never thought in his life that he would have the means to make that large of a donation. And, you know, the piano was maybe $4,500, $5,000. So for some people that might not have seemed like a lot, but for Bob it was. And he said he wanted to donate a piano to his YMCA. And Tim, it goes to what you were saying, this pride, this immediate sense of ownership, that this was his YMCA. And the day the piano arrived, I called him. And again, Marshall's a small town, so he was able to come right over, help get it unpacked, make sure it was tuned, play a few songs on it for everybody. And the meaning and the value that that gift gave to Bob, to me, is the example of true philanthropy, that the donor should get as much, if not more, from their gift than the organization that they're giving it to. And that was such an example of it. And most of the time, I can't even tell that story without getting tears in my eyes, because the meaning that it had to Bob, you could just see that. So I have to say, of all the many, many great memories I have, that's probably my favorite.
And it is still here and it's still used. We play it every once in a while, and there's a Christmas concert. We have a group that takes piano lessons, and they come and do the recital in the lobby every December.
You know, what a gift that's still there and still giving, and has surpassed, I think, you know, Bob passed away, what about a year ago, I think. And yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Tom.
Yeah.
All right. So one of my very first memories here at the YMCA was I was a pretty new member, and it just struck me as kind of the place that I figured out that the Y was just sort of different, and that the CEOs are definitely not afraid to get their hands dirty and be a frontline employee. So I was coming to group exercise while my kids were at school, and there was a day where my favorite instructor was sick. And lo and behold, Tim Olson showed up in the group exercise room and kicked our butts. Actually, we did a circuit training workout. I don't know if you remember this, Tim, but I was like, holy cow, what is this? But that was the first time that I realized that the Y was a different sort of organization, because I couldn't imagine, you know, at a bank that someone from one of the back offices would come out to the front and do that. So Tim, I was very grateful, because I was very protective of my exercise time with small children. So the fact that you were willing to take an hour out of your day and come up and teach a group exercise class to a bunch of stay-at-home moms really struck me. And again, just kind of shows the family that's here at the YMCA and how we all take care of each other. So I don't know if that's your favorate memory or not, Tim, but that's one of my favorite memories of you.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure his favorite memory was when Jess.
Do you remember teaching that class?
Yeah.
There's been a lot of times where I've had to jump in and do things like that. Now, let me ask you, I don't remember exactly. Did I have exercise clothes on, or was I in my business clothes? Because I've done that before too in a pinch.
You had a polo shirt on, but you had gym shorts.
Okay.
Kind of half and half.
Okay. So
business on top, workout on the bottom.
There we go. No, as a leader, I've always tried to be very hands-on, and I guess you could say kind of one of my pet peeves within the Y is service failures. You know, we're here to provide a service to our members, to provide a great experience. And, you know, as a parent coming in, that exercise time can be so important for you to kind of get away from the day-to-day rigors of your life. And so, you know, I've always just felt it's important. We've got to jump in, we've got to help out wherever possible. And, you know, that was just an example of doing that for that day when that happened. So I'm glad I was able to make a positive impact for you that day. But as I was thinking about, all the great memories, and similar to Teresa, it's really hard to kind of pin things down, because every day there's different experiences and memories that happened at the Marshall Y, whether it was call them shenanigans or kind of fun times with staff, whether it's at trainings or just interacting through different things day to day, or just out in the lobby with the members during coffee time and playing cards and, just interacting there. But, as we were talking here, there was a Bob Offenthy story that I'll share in just a minute that I forgot about it. And I don't know how I forgot about it, but Teresa kind of sparked it with me here. But one of the things that I still get chuckles about this from time to time when I think about it is during my time in Marshall, we made a focus of having monthly family fun nights, and we had movie nights and just different activities. And the month of October, obviously Halloween, so we had the Halloween at the Y event. And so I was trying to create a lot of different activities for the event, coming up with different things. And I thought, it would be great. I saw this somewhere if we had this big pit filled with corn, and there could be prizes and candy in there, and the kids could dig through and find their stuff. And I thought, that's the greatest idea, And at the time, it was awesome. The kids enjoyed it, but it was the biggest mess ever. I mean,
Where'd you put it, Tim?
It was, I can't remember if we had like a kiddie pool that we filled it full of. It was some type of structure we had. And by the end of the evening, there was corn everywhere. And I think for weeks we were finding corn in different spots. And it was great at the time, but in hindsight, it was probably very poor judgment on my standpoint to allow that to be in the facility. But one of our board members, Pat Hennon, donated all the corn and donated straw bales too. And I think we had some issues with the straw bales, if I remember too. There might have been some mice after the fact.
I was just going to say, probably brought mice in the bales. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're still finding the corn.
So yeah, we had that. The following year, we had to kind of modify our plans a little bit on that. But so my Bob Offenthy story, again, just the passion that gentleman had for his Y. And any given day, he could be outside doing yard work, pulling weeds, pruning stuff. He just took such an intense amount of pride for that facility and tried to take it upon himself to upkeep. But there was one day, it was probably mid-morning, and the railings that go upstairs on the stairs there were starting to get a little scuffed up and a little worn. And I'm standing down the lobby, and all of a sudden I turn around, and here's Bob with a can of spray paint, spray painting the railing. And I had to politely go up to him and, Bob, I really appreciate what you're doing, but I mean, all that spray mist was coming off of there, and it was getting kind of smelly in there. I had to kind of, we need to do this at a different time. But again, he just took so much pride in that facility and just went out of his way to make sure that it was upkept and it looked beautiful, because it is a beautiful facility. So.
Well, I have to say, Tom has got me as a buffer for the group exercise problem. So if ever we have a situation, I've taught in jeans and a sweatshirt. So I feel you on that, but maybe I need to take a vacation and let the team know that Tom needs to take his time and pay his dues in the group X room. That would be interesting.
That would be a little scary. I've done all kinds of things, but I'm probably not a group X instructor.
Well, Tom,
I'm the pool guy. I'm swimming laps, so I can take people swimming.
Well, there you go. So the next time that Sue is gone, you can teach Aquafit. That's what we'll do.
I could probably do that.
We all have our areas of expertise. I had to learn to be a gymnastics equipment person at a previous Y. So you probably would have been more likely to see me helping set up and tear down the gymnastics equipment on a given day, or teach beginning gymnastics, jumping into day camp.
Yeah, and Tom is like our IT tech guy. If it's broken, we go find Tom, and he usually can figure it out. Well, Tom, can you share with us what your favorite memory so far at the Marshall Y has been?
It's really, really hard to do. I was thinking about it a little bit, and it's all these stories of staff and people and success stories, how you've changed people's lives. But since we're talking about Bob and Pat, that brings back memories. So just Bob, for years, while I was here, about once a week, he would come around the corner to my office, and I'm guessing he did the same with the two of you. He'd come in and just sit down. How is it going today? And then he'd tell me what was wrong. You need to put some paint here. You need to kill the weeds here. You need to do this. And he was just always really, really mindful of the why. And then he came back for the luau. We just renovated the pool here a few months ago, and he came to the luau. We did reopen that and donated a little money for that. And just that continued to this day. But maybe my it's lots of memories together, but one story. So we call it the table of wisdom. We got a bunch of people, mostly men, that sit out by the fireplace, drink coffee in the morning after they work out. And I call them table of wisdom, tell them they should start charging people a quarter to ask questions and get some wisdom. And a lot of those guys are retired farmers, and we'd sit around and just one day when I first got here, it was actually Jack Hennon, so Pat's dad, and some other people. And they started talking about the weather and planting. It was a spring where we were getting a little late, and it went from we were planting and it was kind of cold to planting and it was snowing to Jack. And I remember Jack saying, I got done planting. I stepped right off the tractor onto this drift, and the drift was so high. You didn't have to jump down. I could go right off the tractor. So just those memories and talking fishing. You can always find out where the fish are biting by chatting with some of those guys that have a lot of time to fish. So, but the why is about people, and be it staff, be it members. That's really what it goes back to, is those people and all the, every hour of every day, there's this stories to tell.
Yeah. All right. We're going to go backwards, and we're going to start with Tom this time. Can you tell us what you're most proud of accomplishing during your tenure as CEO here at the Y?
Tom, I'm going to ask a real. Tom, okay. How long have you been there now?
Be 11 years in about a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're the longest. You're the longest running CEO in that YMCA's history.
Time flies too. Yeah. And then kind of the other joke is you got to have a team name to be the CEO. So we went Teresa to Tim to Tom.
Oh, yeah.
So,
well, I'm out.
It's one of the rules. So you can always change it.
Yeah.
So what my accomplishment most proud of, maybe it's hiring Jess. That should probably be my answer. I think you pulled 3 or 4 different positions at the Y, and I think I kind of talked you into every one of those, saying, really, you should apply for this job. But probably not one thing sticks out, but we're still recovering from the pandemic. And so if I had to say one thing, it was the hardship of the pandemic and getting through that. When the state was shut down, all our staff were furloughed except for those administrative staff. So really proud of keeping the full-time team all on board and going. And we made such a pivot in the community. We ran as a school. We had distance learning mostly for staff of Avera and those essential workers that still needed to work for those kids. We did things for other nonprofits. We ran all kinds of virtual classes. So we kept operating as a Y even without a facility being open. And it was tough times. Things changed so drastically, and you kind of get in those 11 years, year to year, it's kind of the same. You can kind of cut and paste sometimes, but we couldn't in those times. Everything was brand new, and it seemed to change every week, the rules and the regulations that came with that. So just really proud of how we weathered that. And we still got a ways to go, but we're well on our way of a really strong comeback.
And I would have to agree with you, Tom. One of the things that was great about Tom's leadership during that time was he gave us the freedom to think outside the box, and he trusted his staff to make those decisions. So you talk about, we had those fit kits. As long as people kept their memberships, they could check out equipment and finding the virtual platforms. And we had actually a COVID exposure room because we had staff that had COVID and was immune. So just all the ways that we serve the community, I'm very proud of that time as well. So I just want to thank Tom for his leadership and his trust in us to let us just kind of run with the ideas we had.
Yeah, I remember those early days, maybe the first couple of weeks of COVID, and I found it somewhere else at a meeting or somewhere online, but it talked about who's going to survive this COVID. And it says you can keep doing the things you're doing now, keep it the same, and you're going to be dead in a year or two, or you can make gradual changes and maybe survive, or you can really look at things and make those, dramatic, be bold in what you do. And we decided as an administrative staff, we're going to be bold. And I think we did a good job of that.
Good for you.
Yeah, I would say kudos to you guys.
Yeah.
I thought about, you guys and other small Ys during that process, because it's challenging just enough, in a day-to-day and normal environment as a small Y, a lot of times to continue to move forward and be innovative. And, it sounds like you guys were very innovative and were able to kind of battle through that. So, that goes to you guys as leaders there and your board to be able to get through that difficult time.
Yeah.
Well, Tim, what are you most proud of accomplishing during your time as CEO here at the Marshall Y?
Oh, this was a hard question for me to answer. It's I'm not big on like tooting my own horn and stuff, and so I had to really kind of think back of some of the things that I went through during my time as a CEO, and just a couple smaller things. The brand revitalization in 2010, I was at the front end of that, so we had to get that kind of going in all of our collateral material and messaging, and then Tom picked that up after I left and finished that out. And being a part of the Avera Hospital and kind of their wellness center when they closed down, and kind of merging that and bringing their members into our mix at the Y and some of the programming there. There were some ups and downs with that, and some challenges, and people not happy with having to come over to the Y and that closing. But I don't know, I think kind of the biggest thing that stands out for me, and it's probably isn't significant in a lot of people's eyes or books, but when I started in November of 2008, it was really at the beginning of kind of the economic downturn. And here I am, first time CEO, young guy, coming into a brand new community, and this is starting to happen. And the demographics in Marshall at that time were starting to change. The Schwann Food Company was making some changes and relocating some people. And so there was some pressure on our membership base, and you rely on that healthy membership base. And so I think being able to kind of just navigate through that the first year or two, being able to create a little bit of stability and still being able to grow a little bit membership wise, I think is something that I'm proud of. Again, I think I had a pretty good, knowledge base. I had a lot of tools in my toolbox from my prior Y experiences. But again, coming in as a first-time CEO, there's a big learning curve there. And then having to deal with some of those changes that are going on in the community. There was some hard work. There was some budget things I had to really look at. I had to be really tight on the expenses, and just manage through things. But again, we were able to create some stability and get through that. So that was probably my proudest accomplishment during my time there.
I know both of you guys were involved with the Avera transition over to the Y, and that's, one of those things that stands the test of time, that there isn't hardly a week that goes by, even now, all those years later, that people say that was the greatest thing that happened. And even though it was maybe a little difficult up front and people didn't know what was going to happen, that's worked out so well, and people are really, really glad about that.
That's good. Tim, and I think we had just spent a lot of money before you got there too, because we spent a couple $100,000 of our savings doing some work on the HVAC system. We had hired a kind of an outside engineering firm that didn't do the initial construction, that came in and did an analysis and found some things that were lacking, that were no longer covered by, any kind of guarantees or anything. And I think it was, just the general HVAC. It wasn't the pool unit at that time. But I mean, that cost a couple $100,000. And so, we depleted some of the savings, right before you got there. So at least I got to spend the money, as opposed to being in the, side where you had to cut back on expenses.
Well, those are the things that make the members happy, though. They can't see it, but they're
But you're comfortable, right?
Yeah.
When you're working out, it's not humid, because the building, what was triggering that is the building was humid the first few years we were open.
Yeah.
Well, what about you, Teresa? What was your moment, your proud accomplishment during your tenure here in Marshall?
I think first, just generally, and I have to give, credit obviously to the volunteers as well, to those first few years of a board of directors, that such a strong foundation for the organization was laid and started, that the volunteers were willing to really dive into those YMCA best practices. They didn't balk at all about starting an annual campaign, right away when the facility opened, even though people were still making payments on capital pledges, that they did such a great job of sharing the mission of the Y and talking about, why there's a YMCA, and just leaving such a strong organization with community pride that has thrived, through now, and will, I believe, thrive, for generations to come. And, one specific part of that was early on, we were having a board meeting and talking about the mission. And for those that you might not realize that YMCA of the USA has a mission that most Ys adopt, which is to put Christian principles into practice through programs that build a healthy spirit, mind, and body for all. Marshall, after lots of conversation back and forth, exactly the way a board should do it, debate, disagreement, came to a consensus that its mission was not going to say Christian principles, but was going to say caring, honesty, respect, and responsibility, because of at the time, a large Somali new immigrant population who were not Christian or may not be Christian. And the volunteers wanted them to feel welcome in the facility when it opened. And I can clearly remember, again, Paul Raycamp, again, this, tough military retired general who I believe was Catholic, very strong in his faith, knew that his faith was not other people's faith. And just being open to that. And when I left there, the reception that they had in the Y, and I have to say, I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, but the leader of the Somali newcomer organization at the time came up to me and shook my hand and said, and thanked me for the work that the Y did in welcoming that community. Because he said, when he heard a YMCA was going to open, he said, we will never be welcome. We will never be able to go there. And he said it was just the opposite, that that community of Somali newcomers were welcome from day one and felt that it was their YMCA just as much as any YMCA. And that says a lot for the volunteers, that they understood that.
Tom.
And Tom, you guys are still doing that. I mean, when I've been kind of helping to plan for the anniversary, and, hearing about the futsal and, other things that are going on. And it seems like for the demographics of Marion or Marshall may have changed a little bit, but the welcoming and open to everybody has just continued.
Yeah, we are a very diverse organization, and that's a real sense of pride.
Tom, can you tell us, in your opinion, how the Y has bettered the greater Marshall community?
I think the easy answer, where most people would go, is probably around health and just it's a healthier community. I still think it's about people. It's, we have equipment and spaces and all those things for health, the physical side, but I think it's mental and social health that maybe it's more important. We have so many people that come here, that are dealing with different things in life, and they're dealing, maybe have lost a spouse or a partner, have mental health concerns, time away from kids, as we talked about earlier. And it's those friendships, and it just carries on. I just look at our water fitness group. We see them in the water, bobbing, having fun, doing fitness. But what they really do is they have coffee together. They go out to eat. They, when somebody has a loss, they share cards and those things. They share recipes, and it's so much about social. And I always say we should track people in the Y. It'd be fun to see. But I know we have members that come in, they sign in, they go upstairs. You would assume they're on equipment working out. What they're really doing is making the rounds, talking to their friends. They come down, they have some coffee, and they go, and that's their day. So we're so much more than a gym and swim. And I think that's really maybe the input or the impact the Y has had. And also as a community hub, it's just, elections are held here, blood drives. It's just where so many things in Marshall happen through the Y.
And I would have to agree with you, Tom. I know when I joined the Y, it's been 20 years now, 20 years ago, give or take. I didn't know a lot of people in Marshall. I had finished school and I had a young family. And now I look at who my very best friends are, and they're all people that I've met here at the YMCA. Every single one of them I've got a connection to through the Y. And
Yeah.
so I think that's a really special thing and not something that every organization can claim, so I would
It's
agree
all
with that.
ages, cultures, nationalities. It's just such a melting pot of the community.
How about you, Tim? In your opinion, how has the Y bettered the greater Marshall community?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of similar thoughts to Tom. When I think of it, I think a lot of people, think of Marshall. Again, it's the regional hub for kind of the region, but Tom said it exactly right on. I mean, the Y is that hub for the community. It's that connecting place where everybody comes together. I mean, you just even said it, all those relationships and friendships that you have, those special bonds that are formed at the Y day in and day out. And again, you think of the four walls, and there's all of these small communities within those four walls, the water aerobics ladies, the people that just go up and use the exercise area.
Table of wisdom.
Table of wisdom. I mean,
That's right.
There's so many of those little communities that, without the Y, some of those connections probably wouldn't be happening. And the Y is just such a positive, safe, and welcoming environment for all. I mean, Tom spoke on it. There's all walks of life that come in, and that melting pot of people, and it just makes it so special because you don't see that in a lot of other organizations. It's a place for the kids to belong and to connect and feel like they're a part of something and kind of learn and grow. And so it's that special hub. And I think about, and there's probably a lot of people, it's like, what would Marshall be without the Y? And there would be a lot missing if the Y wasn't there.
Well, Teresa, can you tell us how the Y has impacted your life?
Yeah, I mean, for those that might not know, my whole career has been the Y. So I grew up in Mankato and Faribault, Minnesota, primarily, and was a Y member in Mankato. Was the first place I was a YMCA member, and then in Faribault when I moved there. So so I look back at my childhood experience in the Y, where my family was very poor, and the Y, unbeknownst to me, of course, as a kid, provided scholarships so that my family could belong, and had such a huge impact because, here I am. At some point in my life, I decided that the Y was going to be my career. And then coming to Marshall at a time where, like Tim, it was my first, and Tom, it was your first CEO experience as well.
Yes. Yep.
So, as the first time that I was the CEO, it gave me that opportunity to fulfill that dream I'd had as a young, program director, but serve such a unique community. And Marshall is always going to have a special place in my heart. That not only is the Y unique there, I think, but because Marshall is its own community far away from other. I always tell people I was living in a town that had a population of about 14,500 and was the biggest town in 60 miles. And people are like, oh my God, that.
Yeah.
But Marshall has this pride and this sense of self-resiliency, I think, because it, especially in its original days, was so isolated, that sense of pride and self-resiliency, I felt like got passed on to me a little bit. Marshall's always going to be, kind of my second home. And the other more minor but kind of fun impact on my life is that I am a Schwann customer for life.
Nice.
If they gave the YMCA $5 million, which was so generous, that gave me that chance to serve the Marshall area, that I cannot help it. Plus they have great food, but we still buy Schwann's food to this day, and will always be a Schwann customer. So that's a little minor impact on my life, but I won't mention how much ice cream I've eaten. And here's a funny story. So I was not aware of Schwann's. I grew up in Minnesota. We didn't buy from Schwann's. I moved when I was 23 out of the state. So as an adult, I didn't really, buy my own food very much when I moved. I hadn't been living that long on my own. So when I moved to Marshall, obviously I had learned about Schwann's through the interview and research process, and realized that somebody would deliver ice cream to my door. I am not kidding when I say I gained 10 pounds in the first couple months that I lived in Marshall, because every week I was getting more. I was like, I gotta cut that out a little bit. So that's my Schwann and we still use the Schwann ice cream spade that I got in my gift basket when I interviewed. I got this gorgeous gift baskets of all things Marshall, including an ice cream spade that said Schwann's on it, a wood handle. The Schwann's has long worn off, but here we are, 20 some years later, still using that.
Tim, same question. How has the Y impacted your life?
Yeah, so, I think back really early in my Y career, I established some core values for myself, and I'm a firm believer in the value of people, and really believing that every person I cross paths with has the potential to bring something positive into my life through their strengths, weaknesses, and experiences, and then vice versa, me being able to do the same for them. And so I just really think about those relationships that I was able to build in Marshall, and all the different people that I crossed paths with, and just the experiences that I was able to have there have really blessed my life, and I'm super proud that I was able to serve the Marshall Y for a period of time, and it's just really enriched my life. And there's still people that I would consider good friends that are in Marshall, and again, I've continued to build out those experiences in Marshall, have added additional tools to my Y toolbox that I have, and I'm forever grateful for that time in Marshall and those experiences and those people that I had an opportunity to work with and meet.
And Tom, how about you? How has the Y impacted your life?
I probably came in a little bit different track. I kind of parachuted in a little bit later in life, and been in the Air Force and been in the Peace Corps, and then all of a sudden the Y came into my life. But it has kind of a way of consuming you. So it's I look at my kids now. I got two girls that are in the 20s, and they grew up as Y kids. I've been around long enough now, especially in Marshall, and I see the kids that you guys had when you were young, and they're starting to come back. Those are some of our staff, and those stories of people that were here as young people. And so, Tim is exactly right. It's just, it's a job where every day is different. You're not in the office with the same 5 people. You're just meeting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people constantly. And every one of those affects your life in a different way, from sadness. I just had a building and property director who was one of my greatest friends and at the Wilmer Y, and just passed away from cancer. And so you have those memories. And then you see these kids that, that were 5 or 6 years old in your camp program. And now they're doing great things in life. And you kind of want to take a little bit of credit, and not myself, but the Y made a difference in their lives and what they're doing, especially when they go into work helping others. So it's it's hard to quantify, but it's all encompassing. Your life kind of becomes the Y, and it's full time all the time, and you really, the rest of your life goes around the relationships and the people that you meet.
Yeah,
Wow.
you think about the kids in Marshall now, the young people who are in their early 20s, they don't remember or know a time when there wasn't a YMCA there. That's just part of their life experience now, is growing up at the Y. And 20 years ago, that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
15, yeah.
You hear it constantly, and from now here it's these people that are 20, but Ted Rose, another great name within our Y.
Yeah.
And Ted was on the board for 9 years, but he tells me the story when he was growing up. He started taking swim lessons at the Y. This was before there was women at the Y. It was only males. Swim lessons were skinny dipping. They didn't have swimsuits. It was all guys, and that's the way it was way back when. And but then he, it meant so much to him in his young years to come back and be a board member for 9 years and serve the Y and be here every day. And we're building that next generation now.
And even Tom, that next generation who will be Y members and volunteer for their YMCA, not just in Marshall, but wherever they go, because now they are going to bring that experience, that the impact that the Marshall Y had on them as a young person throughout the world where they move off to.
Yeah, it's always interesting that, sometimes you're on calls or different things, and the vast majority of people in the United States have had a Y experience and they have a Y story. And, I think I was an odd duck there, and that I didn't step foot in a Y until I actually worked for the Y. But I think most people growing up have some either, even my wife who grew up in central Wisconsin, they did like fun nights. So she actually got on a bus and went about an hour and a half to another town and had teen nights in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And just about everybody talked to has some ties to a YMCA.
Yeah, Tom, and you saying that, actually, I just thought of a quick little story. Just you talk about connections with people, and when I was in Marshall, I had an opportunity, and this was probably under Teresa's tenure, that there was the youth triathlon that was started.
Oh yeah.
In Marshall there, and Arnie Streeb, who was a exec at the Schwann Food Company, was a big part of helping with that. And so I had an opportunity in Marshall to meet Arnie. Well, here I come to Bismarck, and in 2015, I get a call out of the blue, and there's a gentleman that wanted to talk about starting a youth triathlon at the Y here, and I pick it up, and right away it was like, Tim from Marshall and Arnie from Marshall, and there was just that connection. And now to this date, we've done a youth triathlon here in Bismarck. And Arnie, he's actually a board member of ours here at the Y, but it was because of that connection in Marshall with this individual, now that it's carried over into my Y here.
Well, I really do appreciate all the time you've given us today. I just have one last question for you, and then we can wrap it up and you can get back to your normal work days. But Teresa, can you tell us what your hopes are for the future of the Y?
I think really just in a very general sense that the Marshall YMCA, my hope is, and I have absolute confidence that this is going to be the case, that it just stays true to its mission and purpose of creating a strong community for just generations to come, and continues to have that strong impact on the community and on individuals. And I have no doubt that that's going to be the case.
What about you, Tim? What are your hopes for the future of the Y?
Yeah, I wouldn't even really say it's a hope. I mean, it's very confident that, the Y will continue to be an important aspect of the community, addressing those community needs, there to help strengthen the community, just like you guys did during the time of COVID, continuing to be a strong connecting point for people for the next 20 years. And again, have all the confidence in the world, because there's great leadership there, both board and staff. So the Y is going to continue to flourish.
And Tom, how about you? What are your hopes for the future of our Y?
I think sitting in this chair 20 years on, we've had a great 20 years, great leadership throughout. We have some challenges as the building gets 20 years old. We're going to, as a community, really, there's a challenge out for the community. We got to reinvest in the Y, keep the building, a place where people want to go. And so I have great confidence we will do that. But I think it's through, straight bonding, fundraising, and we're a different community than 20 years ago. And so, my hope is that we kind of have a resurgence, and we'll come back around and have maybe a few years where we're going to have to really reinvest in the Y and keep that up for the next generation.
All right. Well, for Teresa Lebke, Tim Olson, Tom Bolin, I'm Jessica Dahms, and I want to thank you so much for joining us for the CEO Roundtable to celebrate the 20th anniversary of our Marshall Area YMCA.